Hi, Jules back for day 30 and 31 of Ethany's 31 Days of Tarot. Day 30 asks for my thoughts on tarot becoming mainstream. I think there's positives and negatives to do with this. Some of the negatives are that there's a lot of rip-off decks. There's a lot of artists that are creating really stunning tarot decks, and then there are companies that are deciding to take advantage of this and creating knockoff decks. A lot of people are getting ripped off because of this, and that is definitely a huge downside with tarot's popularity. Another thing is cultural appropriation. There's huge amounts of appropriation happening within the tarot and oracle community, which is really unfortunate to see. I'm actively trying to seek out content created by people from the cultures that are being depicted on the cards, and buying from deck creators directly. I feel like this is the best way to try and combat these two issues, which are an unfortunate side effect of tarot becoming mainstream. I decided to start with the negative stuff because I like to leave on a slightly lighter note. So now I'd like to talk about the benefits of tarot going mainstream. I think one of the benefits is that tarot has become more accessible to more people. You don't need to seek out a small metaphysical shop in the community that you're living in to track down a tarot deck. Tarot decks are available everywhere now. There's also, because of the increase in popularity and interest in tarot, I also feel like there is a lot more diversity and inclusion in terms of the decks that are being created and the images that are being depicted in them, which I think is a huge win. Everyone is entitled to do tarot, or rather tarot is for everyone. And so I think it's really important to be able to see yourself depicted when you pick up a tarot deck. And I love that the mainstream nature of tarot means that there's enough interest for lots of people to get their decks published, not just big name authors. Yeah, I think that that's a huge benefit. Is there anything else I wanted to say about that? I don't think so. I think that's it. The next question for day 31 asks, how do you pick your tarot decks for a reading? When it comes to my own personal readings, I cycle through all of my decks. I used to pick them somewhat more randomly, but as my collection has grown, I've gone through and taken some time to figure out which decks work for which astrological seasons, and I switch them up not month to month, but astrological season by astrological season. I also have come up with a spread that helps me incorporate a few different decks at the same time, which is a good way to make sure that I'm actually using them. I think it's a bit of a loss if something just sits on the shelf and doesn't get used. So I've been trying really hard to cycle through and make sure that I'm including every single one of my decks. And if there are decks that I'm not using, then perhaps that's an indication that it's time for them to move on to a new home, possibly. I am curious to see how this will all play out. I've been doing this for a few months, and it'll be interesting to see. When I'm reading for other people, which I primarily do in the context of my tarot group or friends or family, I will typically look at the energy of a deck, and if someone is close to me is struggling with something, then I will typically gravitate towards a deck that feels really gentle and nurturing. There are some decks that I own that I only use for personal readings for a variety of different reasons in terms of imagery or whatever else. I find when it comes to reading for other people, I don't always know what that person's lived experience is, and so I gravitate a lot towards animal decks, to be perfectly honest, because I feel like they provide a nice neutral base until I get to know that person and what their perspective is and their lived experiences, and then I can do a better job of picking something that would fit for them. Yeah, so I would love to know what your thoughts on these questions are. What do you think about tarot becoming mainstream? And how do you pick your decks? Thanks.